In all the years of Nomad Capitalist, we've talked about many different ways to dramatically reduce your taxes by living overseas. From traveling around the world as a nomad to my trifecta method of maintaining homes in 3 different places and splitting your time. But what I hear increasingly from people not only starting large businesses, but people who've already established themselves, they have wealth, is we don't want to be constantly moving. We'd like the flexibility, but not the obligation. So how do you live in just one place and reduce your taxes? I'm going to give you several things to consider right now. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best, from lower taxes to having second citizenships for more options. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. And this is something that I'm increasingly hearing more and more, especially as more decamillionaires, centimillionaires, even billionaires come and work with us here at Nomad Capitalist is, Andrew, I like the idea of being able to have multiple homes, but I don't want to have the obligation that I'm constantly switching between them. I personally like moving around the world. It's not even a tax plan. Before I even learned about the tax benefits more than a decade ago of how tax residence works and the foreign earned income exclusion for U.S. citizens, I wanted the idea of living in different places. I get a little bit bored. I like sampling the best that each culture has to offer throughout the course of a year. Many people, though, feel more productive by staying in one place, and so there's a couple different things that you can consider. Probably the most well-known options are you can simply move to a tax-free country. Now, everything we're going to talk about today comes with the understanding that if you are from the United States or any other country that may decide to tax you extraterritorially on your worldwide income, you need additional tax planning to make sure that you're minimizing your taxes at home. But from a perspective of where you're arriving, tax-free countries are not going to add any additional tax if you do owe any at home. So if you're Canadian, Australian, British, what have you, at least for now, you can move to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, to Monaco, to Vanuatu, to many of the countries in the Middle East, and you can legally pay zero tax. You can run companies in many cases in those jurisdictions. So the UAE, for example, has a number of free zones, and so you can set up your company there. That facilitates residence. You can live in the country, become a tax resident. Other countries have similar programs. That's pretty straightforward. But what I hear is, Andrew, even if I could afford a 42-euro hamburger, Monaco is too expensive, it's too small, it seems a little bit too old money for me. The UAE is too hot, I don't like certain things about it. Vanuatu, where's that? So how do you do it otherwise? Well, the question is, what is your tax budget? I think that the idea of paying zero tax is certainly appealing, but from a lifestyle, from a human perspective, if you're paying 50% now, you might be willing to pay 10% and say, hey, why not? I think the challenge is when you go from 50 to zero and then getting back up to 10, because what happens is when you go down to zero, you feel a lot more ambitious and you start growing your income a lot faster. And then so you have a much larger pie on which to be taxed at some small percentage. It may be better to consider paying something. And so what you have is, number one, territorial tax countries like Costa Rica, like Panama, like Malaysia, like Singapore, and others where you can go and your foreign source income is not taxed. Now, in many of these countries we've talked about in the past, you have issues where are you bringing money into the country to live on? That money could be taxed. Or are you doing a job working for your company? How many other people are in your company? There's different rules on the fact that you may need to pay some tax on your salary. So maybe your company makes $1 million a year. You need to take a $100,000 salary, and then that salary may be taxed at rates of 30%. So these are countries that have taxation. In countries like Singapore, it's relatively moderate. Georgia, somewhat moderate. And so you might be paying those moderate rates on just a much smaller portion of your income. You may not be paying anything at all, but everyone's situation is different. And I've had situations where a guy could have paid zero living in Thailand, but he sent a bunch of money to Thailand, and now it looks as if that money was earned in the year, it was remitted. Now we've got kind of a tax mess to clean up, and so you want to be careful of that. So those countries could potentially be taxed at zero. There are also countries where they have tax exemptions, where for a certain number of years you can pay no tax or pay no tax on most sources of income. So Portugal is well known for its NHR program. Certainly a good program for many people, but you should be aware it's a little bit like Swiss cheese. There are some exceptions, there are some exemptions, there is a blacklist of where your company is set up, so you're going to pay something if you're running an active business. It may only be a few percent, but if you're an active entrepreneur, don't expect it to be a total ticket away from taxes. Other countries like Uruguay have developed similar programs where for 5 years or 10 years you're not going to pay. Other countries like Ireland have non-dom tax programs where you can pay on money that's brought into the country. Foreign source income isn't taxed. Other countries like Italy and more commonly known Switzerland have developed lump sum taxes where it may be a flat amount to pay or it may be negotiated with the country or based on where you're living in the country. So go to Italy, pay a flat 100,000 euros a year, and hey, it's up to you how much you want to make overseas, right? If you make 200,000 euros a year, not a great deal. If you make 2 million euros a year, you're paying effectively 5% tax on all of your foreign income. And as long as that foreign income isn't taxed where it's incorporated, you've got yourself a pretty low tax rate. And if you like living in Italy, probably a small compromise, right? You've got other places like Jersey, Gibraltar. Again, you pay one tax. Maybe you pay a tiny little bit extra, like in Jersey, you might pay 1% extra on everything over the flat amount of tax. It's going to cost you about 200,000 US dollars a year to live in Jersey. Places like Gibraltar are certainly cheaper. There are some far-flung islands, whether it's Sark, or others, that they have programs that most people probably want to live in. So that's one option you can consider. And then from there, you can simply consider low tax countries. And so, find a country that has low tax. Find a country that has a simple tax code. There are also countries where, depending on how much you make, you can pay very little on your business income. So, for example, in Georgia, they do have taxes. They do have some benefits. If you set up a company, you can defer the taxes. I've never necessarily said incorporate in Georgia is the best place to incorporate. However, if you are a freelancer in Georgia, you can benefit from a 1% tax on a certain amount of gross receipts. Other countries like Armenia are rolling out programs like that. But you can also consider a country like Montenegro. You've got about a 9% tax rate, and your entire income may not be subject to that because you've got a more simple tax code. And so that's an example of a country that has a lower tax rate. Bulgaria, more commonly discussed one. A lot of Europeans go to Bulgaria to reduce their tax rate to around 10% with proper planning. And so you can certainly find countries where the taxes are just quite low. And we've seen on the corporate side some countries like Barbados, reducing their tax rates where they're actually regressive tax rates. The more money you make, the lower your tax rate goes, down to 1.5%. And so there's a lot of places out there where you might pay a little bit of something, but it might be worth it for you, okay? So that's kind of an overview of any of the programs you could use to spend all your time living in one country and not having to pay a tremendous amount of tax or potentially even zero. If you don't want to stick to the Qatars, the Bahrains, the UAEs, the Monacos, the Vanuatus, you can certainly focus on the Panamas, the Malaysias, the Irelands, the Montenegros. Those are different options that you can use to reduce your tax bill. Obviously, everyone's situation requires proper planning, both in how you're sending money to the country, how your business is running, how you're personally living. There are lots of factors that have to be analyzed, but it is possible beyond just the tax-free countries of tiny little islands like Antigua, Vanuatu, or the hot desert countries of the Middle East, or the tiny countries like Monaco. It is possible to live in one place full-time. There are dozens of options with proper planning to dramatically reduce your tax bill. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.